Tonight, I would like to introduce you to Dr. Theresa Newsom. She is a gifted education teacher at Martinez Elementary in Colorado Springs School District 11, as I mentioned before. She has a dual emphasis with children of color, as well as leadership skill development in students. And she has a great presentation to share with us tonight. She presents across the nation and across our state. And she is the CEO of Children with Promise Educational Services, LLC, and hopefully she'll share a little bit of that information about her organization with us tonight towards the end of her presentation. I think the topic she has to share tonight is not only a timely topic right now, but it's something we have been reflecting on, working towards in gifted education for some years now, and helping to create equity in our identification practices and bridge that disparity in our identification of students of color, especially in the state of Colorado. So we are super excited to have Theresa here with us tonight. Theresa, I'm going to hand it over to you so that you can go ahead and share your expertise with us. I can't wait to hear what you have to say. And then folks watching, please, as you are watching, if you have questions, please be sure to comment in the feed, and we'll get those comments towards the end of our presentation tonight. So Theresa, without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Hello, everyone. I wish I could see you, but I know that you're there. I'm Dr. Theresa Newsom, and just to give you a little background of who I am, again, I am a gifted resource teacher from Martinez Elementary School in District 11 in Colorado Springs. I'm also a SANG facilitator for School District 11, and I am the founder of the Black Educators Network in Colorado Springs. We're a diverse group of educators from cross districts that focus on supporting all educators, especially our pre-service teachers and families that need the extra support. We put on a literacy festival each year to support literacy, but also to give our young children, elementary students, an opportunity to be on a college campus at UCCS so that they can be thinking about their pathway forward in the future for their learning, which comes back to why are we here today? And the topic is Black and Gifted. I'm going to share my screen. So just give me just a minute. Get this on board here. Let's see. Okay. And it should be coming on in just a, there it is. So our topic today is Black and Gifted. My culture enriches my destiny. You may be wondering why that is the topic. Okay? But before we go into the why, I just want to go over the agenda for today. And that agenda includes the introduction of the why, essential questions that I think are important to consider as we go through this presentation, the 9 dimensions that are so important to the cultural perspectives of African Americans, the what, the social emotional learning and identity, and then the how. How do I intermingle these 9 dimensions with content and social practices? And then there'll be time for Q&A. So the why, the whole gifted child, okay? Heart, mind, body, and culture. We can't separate them. They're part of who we are. As a member of the Whole Gifted Child Task Force for the National Association of Gifted Children, we did a webinar on June 3rd. It was important for me to talk about culture, because we know that everyone has one, but we don't always think about why it's important when we're working with children in the classroom or with our interactions with people from diverse backgrounds. And so the importance of looking at a whole person is just as important as all of the best practices that we learn as educators. As people, learning about people's culture helps us build that understanding that helps us not always agree to disagree, not always to agree, But when we disagree, we still have an understanding of where people are coming from. And so the heart, the mind, the body, and the culture is important to understanding the whole gifted child. Essential questions to ponder during this presentation. What is culture? I'm not going to read the definition. It's already there. You can add other words. You may have some other things like ethos, perspectives, but culture is not something you can take out of a person. It is part of the person. So when I start my classes, I always ask essential questions like many of the educators that are listening. But even if you're not an educator, you're a parent, you're an aunt, you're an uncle, you're a sister, you're a friend. And knowing that culture is part of our day-to-day interactions may not be so much with COVID-19 happening and we're still staying safer at home, but when we do interact with people, it is part of our relationship. Okay? Understanding and honoring people's attitudes and their values and their beliefs. When we're in the classroom as educators, it does play a role in my instructional practices. I hope it plays a role in yours. If it hasn't been something you've thought about, this is the day we're going to think about it. Everyone brings their culture into the conversation. It may not be intentional, and it may not even be direct, but our culture, again, is not going to be separated from who we are. As an educator, I'm going to bring into my instructional practices, my culture. I want my students to see that, yes, they have an African-American teacher, and I will use those Black and African-American interchangeably because I use both of them and I'm very comfortable with both of those terms. Okay. I can't leave my culture at home. I can't lay it on the desk. I have to say, this is who I am, and therefore it's important to me to not deny who I am. Because I wouldn't be a very good instructor, and I definitely wouldn't be able to share authentically what's important about my experiences and my lens and where I'm coming from, but also knowing to honor everyone else's culture too. So, as you're thinking about those questions, Black and gifted, my culture enriches my destiny. My name is important. It's my identity. My name is Theresa Yvonne Newsom. I was born Theresa Yvonne White, and then I got married. But my name is my identity. Theresa is the name I want to be called. Sometimes in situations, people want to give me a nickname, Terry. Nothing wrong with Terry, but that's not my name. That was not the name I had chose. Sometimes people want to call me just T. And again, I'm okay with nicknames, but my identity is Theresa. And sometimes when we are interacting with people, we want to give them a name that we like, and it may not be the right one for them. So when we're looking at, and I'm going to focus on children, because this is an educational presentation, okay? Honoring someone's name, when they introduce themselves, call them by what they choose. Okay? A nickname needs permission, and it's not okay just to create a nickname for someone and take away their identity. Okay? Attributes, which I'm going to get to, okay? But our physical attributes are so important. Okay? We see color. Sometimes people say, well, I don't see color, I'm colorblind, but for a person of color, we don't want you to be colorblind. We want you to see us for the richness of our skin tones. I wear glasses. I have curly hair sometimes. I know people look at me when I come to work and they're like, oh, you changed your hairstyle. You've got a bigger hairstyle. You've got your hair in braids. At one time in my life, I had my hair straightened. I've been natural for the last 6 years. But these are my attributes. Sometimes I'm skinnier than today than I was yesterday, or I might be heavier too. those are my attributes. And I love my attributes. Our children love their attributes, and we want to make sure that we honor those attributes like anybody else that we work with. Okay? Our existence is important. Knowing that, saying hello, how are you, smiling, letting us know that you recognize us, that's important. Okay? Looking at our giftedness, our talents, our exceptionalities, that's also very important. How do I know if you're gifted? Giftedness, as we know, comes in many different dimensions. There's many different areas. I'm not going to name them all, but I know that we know there's verbal giftedness, there's mathematical giftedness, there's athletic giftedness, we call it psychomotor giftedness. We also look at leadership giftedness, which is where my research is in, developing leadership giftedness. Any content area that you can think of can be identified as an area of giftedness. We know there's creative giftedness. There's many talents that are also looked at, artistic giftedness. We can go on and on. We also have students, people that we know that may be twice exceptional. They're gifted, but they also have some challenges. That's part of who they are. And it's important because that's part of their identity. And so when we look at the look-fors for identifying giftedness in children, especially Black children, we're looking at all of these pieces, all of their attributes, because it's them, okay? It's them, okay? But I'm also gonna focus on the culture, because again, we don't leave it at home. We bring it to school with us. We bring it to the grocery store. We bring it to all of our spaces, okay? So again, identity, my name is important. Saying it correctly, sometimes again, people will decide to shorten it because it's just too hard to say. But the reality is, when we have a challenge before us, we accept the challenge and we practice it. We ask for forgiveness by saying, it's going to take me a little while, but I do need to be able to say your name correctly. And it's so important because we want to honor and value not just the students who are gifted, but anyone, just anyone we encounter. But this presentation is about being Black, because we're Black first and gifted. Okay. So you're thinking, well, okay, you brought up this culture thing. So why is culture so important? Well, let me share with you. You can see on the screen, it says attribute look fors beyond my name. And I'm not going to read them to you because I know you're good readers. So take a minute and just look at those attributes. And if you look on the gray side of the screen, or the bluish color, might look blue to you, it says these are the attributes identified by Dr. A.W. Boykin in 1983 in his research. And what he found was that when slaves were brought over from West Africa, the attributes, the culture was brought with them. They didn't leave it in Africa. They brought it. It was part of them, of course. And even today, in 2020, these 9 attributes that may not be familiar to you, they may not be familiar to African Americans, but we live these attributes without knowing the name. Sometimes we get caught up in vocabulary and we say, oh, well, I didn't know this and I didn't know that. It's okay. It's totally okay not to know the names, not to know the words, not to know the vocabulary. But it's important that we honor and bring them into the classroom in our instructional practices. It's important that we know these attributes or are aware of them so that as we interact with Black Americans and Black and gifted, we are aware where they're coming from. Why? Because it's part of the culture. It's part of understanding different perspectives. We honor everyone's culture. If you think about the culture, your culture, think about great-grandmother, your grandmother, maybe your mother. But somewhere in your lineage, you're going to say, you know, we used to do this. When I went to grandma's house, this is what we did, or grandmother's house, or my Nana's house, or my Grammy's house. These are things that we honored. These are things that we did. We don't do them so much today, but when I went to my Grammys, this is what I did. Well, in Black culture, we still do these things. We just may not have the vocabulary. So if you ask a student, well, tell me about your harmony, they're gonna probably look at you like, what? No, it's not something that they know, it's just something that we do. It's an automatic. And do all Black people do this? Black and gifted? No. I am going to generalize. I'm not going to say 100% because there's nothing 100%. But generally speaking, based on Dr. Boykin's research, these are things that are important in our culture. These attributes go with us to our homes. They're with us at school. They're in our recreational activities. They're in our church experiences. Every place we go, they're a part of us. And so let's talk about them a little bit more. When I look at spirituality, some people are more comfortable with the words values and beliefs. Perfectly fine with me. The goal is not to make people uncomfortable so much today. A little discomfort, of course. But the goal is to ensure that we value the values and beliefs of all students. Students who are Black and gifted may not speak out. They may be the only one in the classroom. It's hard to be the only in a situation. Having been the only for many, many years, my educational experiences, I know that sometimes you don't want to speak up. You don't want to share your values and beliefs because everybody looks at you and you're being the only one in the class can be challenging. But values and beliefs or spirituality, as Dr. Boykin says, is part of us. But you're also going to say, well, that's part of you too. And that's important because it's part of your culture and it's part of our culture. Okay? Harmony. Okay? How are things related together? You know, it's like having a balance. It's not going to be perfect all the time. Sometimes it's up and sometimes it's down, but harmony is about making a connection to nature and to humankind. Everybody can identify with that one. You may call it something else, probably just connections. We use the word harmony. Movement, you know, we are a people that enjoy movement. Now, I don't know who doesn't enjoy movement though. Honestly, we all like to move. We've got yoga that doesn't require a lot of movement, but they do move. We also have Zumba dance, all kinds of dance. Some people are out, you know, celebrating. You might have been doing some dance movements for exercise. Movement is important, and our students need to be able to move just like any other student. We know that movement is as a part of not just moving physically, but it's also the rhythm, the percussion, the dance. It's part of our psychological health. They say if you move, you're probably gonna feel better. Go out and take a walk. That's movement, okay? Verve. Now this is a word that may not be familiar to you, but as far as words you use every day, but for Black and gifted, you're gonna say, wow, I can do that. Being energetic and being lively. Okay. Sometimes we say, well, why are Black people and Black and gifted so lively? Why are we so loud? Well, that's just part of our culture. That's who we are. It gives us a chance to express ourselves. And sometimes you've got to do that high five. You got to do some extra movement. You got to be lively. I know we're not the only ones. You probably have a lively friend and you think, wow, you know, they have a lot of energy. And they'll say, Theresa, you do have a lot of energy. The bottom line is, when we're working with people of color and our Black and gifted students, we need to make sure that it's not always quiet. There's a time for quietness, but then we also got to get our verve on. We've got to be lively and we've got to be energetic, not just in the PE class, but as part of the classroom, part of having a conversation. We don't want to be somber throughout the day. It's part of our culture, and it might be part of yours. Okay? The affect. Okay? We look at feelings. We know, being a SANG facilitator, we focus on the social emotional needs of gifted students. Well, Black and gifted students, students who are Black and gifted also have emotional needs that need to be addressed. Again, as I mentioned, being lonely, being in isolation, being the one, maybe there's two in the classroom. That doesn't mean they're going to be best friends though. Oh, there's two of you, it's comfortable. Yeah, okay. No, that's not how it works. We have differences, we have different perspectives. We don't always get along. It might be two males, it might be two females, it might be a male and a female. That doesn't mean they're going to be best friends just because they're Black. But we do know that students come with all kinds of feelings, and we have to acknowledge them. But also being very aware that when you're Black and gifted, there are some additional feelings, because again, if you're the one, or maybe there's two or three, we know that when certain topics come up, everybody looks at the Black students. It's just a natural thing. It's not to be hurtful necessarily. It's just like, oh, we're talking about slavery. Oh, we're going to talk about Black Lives Matter. Why is this happening? And why is it happening? Why is this your reaction? Well, that's something that needs to be discussed. But again, we need to be comfortable and respected in all of our spaces. And so that affect, that social-emotional need has to be addressed, and that environment has to be respectful so that we can hear the voices, because communalism, number 6, is important. We are a community group. Black people, we love to be, we're family oriented. Not that other groups are not, but family, the community, doing things together is truly important. When we're doing cooperative learning, we learn so much more because we're not so competitive. Yes, on the track field, on football, in sports, we are very competitive. But when it comes to a learning environment, we are not here to be as competitive. The A doesn't have the same value because we believe that we want to bring people up together. We're not so much into, I got to get the A or the A+ in order to be valued. The group rises together because we are a community and we want everyone to succeed. We're not into that competition when it comes to the learning environment so much. We enjoy having an A. I'm not going to say I hated getting an A, but it wasn't what I was striving for perfection. And we want to also ensure that our students, any student, is not focused on perfectionism. It's about working together as a team. Okay? When we look at our expressive individualism, we're also looking at, how do I express myself? I'm a person who likes to dress up. Some people are thinking, you're dressed up in a dress at home on Zoom and you can't see anybody? This is my expressive individualism. It's important for me because this is what I would do if I was at work. It's important that I look good to me, so then I feel better and then I present, I present better. It's my form of expression. Some people want to wear t-shirts. Some people want to wear tennis shoes. Whatever they do, it's important that we express ourselves. And so when people are looking at the Black and gifted students and they're like, you changed your hairstyle. Oh, wow, you've got a different shirt on. That's an interesting topic. That's an interesting saying on your shirt. That is part of our expression of who we are. Because again, we are individuals. And it's important that we identify who we are, our beliefs, what brings harmony to our life, and that we're comfortable in our own skin. Oral traditions. This one I know that it's easy for instruction because we can be very expressive. We can be, soft, and we can be loud. We love storytelling. I think readers' theater, poetry, any kind of oral presentations, we carry our stories with us. Some people feel like you've been carrying a story for 400 years. And we have, ever since we came to America. We came on slave ships. Okay. Black and gifted students, Black and gifted people, they may not have been identified by the tests that we give in the school systems, but Black and gifted folks came from Africa. And we came already Black, and we came already gifted. We have survival skills. We were able to go through this 400-year journey, generation after generation after generation, and we're still here. We are fighting for equality. We're looking for equity. And therefore, we're going to continue to be strong in our oral traditions. Sometimes those oral traditions of our history are hurtful and they're painful. But if we don't remember our past, how do we move towards the future? Our past is important, but we're not stuck there. And that's something we really need to work on in our classrooms, in our conversations, because again, it's so important that knowing our past means we don't keep repeating the same past, the same history over and over and over. It's important that those oral traditions are in our head, we know them, but then we use them to move forward. That's how we help our Black and gifted students. We bring up what's important today, but make the connections too. The last attribute is social time perspective, ecological interactions. And that means that we're looking at time and space, or social space, personal and phenomenological, and that what's important for time may not be important to people who are from a European or white background. We see time in a different way. And so sometimes you might hear people say, well, you said 10 o'clock and I show up at 10:15. Or we had a social at one time and people show up at a different time. Because we see time in various aspects. We're not just looking at a clock saying, oh, it's this time right now, therefore this has to happen. And so sometimes when students are a little bit late to class, we're like, why are you late? I'm not saying it's okay every day, but I'm just saying that sometimes the way we look at time is not the same way that you look at a clock and say, this is what we need to do. We just look at space and time a little bit differently. Okay. So moving forward, okay, sometimes we have students in our classrooms and we're looking at people and we're saying, why is there limited engagement in the conversation? Everybody's laughing and we're full of life, and then we say, there's a Black student over there and was one of my Black and gifted students, why aren't they involved? Well, sometimes we feel there's emotional suppression, we can't express ourselves, there's not a lot of energy going on, so we don't want to get involved because we just need to just be somber and we don't want to engage. Lack of activities, communal activities, again, collaborative and cooperative learning is really important. I want to be part of the conversation, not be the conversation. That's very different. How do we make connections from home to school? That's important that we mix them together. It's not a, well, I'm gonna check my time here. It's not a disconnect. They should be connected. So I'm not gonna read all these to you, but just again, we are looking at our cultural capital, individual competition. There's time for it, and there's time that we don't really want that time, but we don't want to be competitive. We don't want to always be in quiet environments and so forth. So I'll leave it with that because I don't want to use up all the time. Code switching, in case you're looking at why do we do that? We code switch because they're in different settings. We need to be able to adapt and make it work for ourselves. Black and gifted students speak well. And I want to just bring this up that sometimes people say, well, why are you speaking maybe slang language and then you come to class and you're speaking the King's English? We know how to code switch. We move that around based on the circumstances and who we're talking to. But when we say students are articulate, that Black student really speaks well. It doesn't go over well because it shouldn't be a shock. It shouldn't be a surprise. This is just who we are. We can make it work, but we also know that that's a microaggression when we are called out for speaking well, speaking intelligently, or we're articulate, because we are, our Black and gifted students are, and it shouldn't be made a big deal. Okay? So as a teacher in a classroom, again, I mentioned some of these things already, but again, just want to call out a few things, okay? Just for you to look at, and you can read the screen. I'm sorry if it's too small, but it is where we're at, okay? I mentioned oral traditions because, again, there's some ideas of how do we teach Black and gifted students, help them feel respected in a classroom, especially if they're the only one. Cooperative and collaborative groups. We do problem solving. We do real world scenarios. We write from a cultural lens. When you're asking students to research for their social studies class or their STEM class, I always ask students, let's look at Black or Hispanic, Asian American scientists, mathematicians, artists. We do learn a lot of European history. We learn a lot of the American history. We don't learn about the different cultures, especially Black culture, unless it's slavery. And we all know our history is much more than just the slavery trade, the selling of slaves. We are in the 21st century and we have Google. And with Google, we can look up anything. So we want students to have a sense of belonging. We want students to feel valued. We want them to know that we care. So with my younger students, I do teach at elementary school. And when I have my young students do research, I will select the mathematicians of color. And then I put all the names in a hat and say, select one. They put it in. And then they select that person, says, I don't know who that is. I said, exactly. This is a learning time. We're trying to stretch our students, they're gifted, not keep teaching what they already know and what they're comfortable for and they're comfortable with. And so providing them or having them research mathematicians of color is important. And it can be done because we have Google. And so as educators, if we don't know something, it's okay. Google is there for all of us, including me. NAGC has resources for educators. Some of you know that and you've used those resources, and some of you may not be aware that the National Association of Gifted Children has lots of resources out there. But this is something that you may not be familiar with, is the Teachers of Gifted Students Bill of Rights. And so won't read it to you, but knowing that at the end, as you look at this, knowing that this student, this Black and gifted student needs something different. We're not teachers of being cookie cutters in our instructional practices. We are looking for creative, critical thinking activities. As Dr. George Betts, my mentor, my advisor, when I graduated from UNC with my doctorate, he said, Theresa, we're looking for a diversity of thought. We're helping our students become autonomous learners. And as autonomous learners, teachers have the right to do what's different for their students. And I want to make sure that we remember his words and his actions as a former president of NAGC. Some citations in case for those of you who are interested in knowing where some of these resources come from. as I wrap up my presentation, I want you to think about the Harvard University debate team. These young people were champions in 2019, may be champions in 2020, but COVID occurred. We can enrich giftedness in all its forms, but we also have to make sure the door is open. When the door is open, when we're looking for students who are Black and gifted, we start by talking to our colleagues, asking, who do I need to look at? Who should I spend some time with? I work with 100 students every day when I'm teaching in the elementary school, kindergarten through 5th grade. Kindergarten through 5th grade are not always identified gifted. They may be talent pool. They may be students that teachers say, I think if you gave them that push, Theresa, they would get over that hurdle. Am I looking for everybody to be identified gifted? Not really, because we know we have a talent pool. But the biggest thing is making sure that our room, when we look around our classrooms, our relationships, who's not there? And if we're not seeing Black and gifted in the room, in our relationships, outside of school, what do we do? Do we just continue onward, or do we change the status quo? Thank you so much for letting me share about Black and gifted. The culture enriches our destiny. When we know our culture, when our culture is honored, we are able to move forward and achieve the American dream. We take away the barriers, we take away, we eradicate some of this racial systemic institutionalized behaviors that do block us from getting to where we want to be. Every child should have the right to become who they should be. And in this presentation, I hope I've given you some food for thought, some ideas of what can be done, and I appreciate your time. Thank you for allowing me to present today. I hope you can contact me at Children with Promise Educational Services anytime. My phone number is there, and I'm now open for questions. Thank you so much.
Theresa, thank you so much for everything you shared tonight. I feel like talking about culture is so important. You are absolutely right. We do not leave it at home. It comes with us wherever we go. And I do think that there are aspects of our educational system that don't necessarily honor those different cultures that come into our buildings every single day. And I think that's something as educators that we could all do with some introspection and some understanding about how we better serve those students in our classroom, serve all of our students in our classrooms. So I appreciate what you had to share. We're going to wait a minute to see if we get some comments on the live or some questions on the live feed. We'd have a lot of comments, a lot of people thankful for what you had to share with us today.
Thank you.
We did have one question from Jessica from Denver, and I'm going to pull that up right now. She's not on right now, I don't believe, but she can watch this again later. She asks, how is the identification of characteristics of a culture, such as the 9 traits that you mentioned this evening, different from stereotyping? She says, I have a hard time with this concept, and I'm wondering what your insights are on this. So the differences between generalizations and stereotyping.
Well, generalizations are just that. Generalizations can be applied to many, many people. As I said, you don't leave your Verve at home. If you're a lively person, you're gonna have that with you. But a stereotype is basically saying, oh, when I see someone who's sagging, their pants are down, and we see that across groups, racial groups. We see white students and Black students and Hispanic students and so forth. But when we see certain students sagging their pants, then we kind of get this stereotype of that might be a bad child, and this one, they're just trying to be cool and fit in. And so we are accepting to one group and not accepting to another group. And they might have the same I just want to fit in. But we do stereotype and say, this is good and this is bad. And that's what, so learning the attributes, again, it's a generalization. You will see some of those attributes that you say, this is me. I'm not Black, but it's still me. So I don't know if I'm supposed to be in the corner or not, but I don't know if people can see me because I can't see myself. So just in case.
No, you are.
I might have not done something right.
I really appreciate that distinction, because I think that that's really important. And when we can make an assumption about one person because of a trait, but make a different assumption about a different person who is not the same race or ethnicity, and make a different assumption based on the same trait, then yeah, we're definitely stereotyping and making some generalizations that are negative and not helpful. So I appreciate that distinction. Connie Brown says, she says, thank you, Theresa. I'm always energized and informed when I hear you.
And thank you.
And Tina Harlow said, this will help me be more aware of who is not there and invite as many different perspectives as possible. Here we go. I have loved teaching our Young Scholars program, identifying students who are typically underrepresented in gifted programs. This is Marissa Powell in Fairfax County Public Schools in Virginia. So we've got somebody listening from Virginia. Is there something happening like that system-wide in Colorado? So how are we working on identifying students who are typically underrepresented in Colorado?
Well, when we identify students, and there's our state has some specific guidelines, and so we do use the CAGT for testing. We also use our talent pool. We do a portfolio so students can be we can collect data, and we so there's a format and there's some procedures, but I also think we can go beyond that. And again, if you're starting with kindergarten like I am, they're not identified. Not that we cannot. I did have a kindergarten student that was accelerated to second grade. We use CAGT, we use the Iowa Test of Basic Skills. So we had the data to support accelerating that kindergartner to second grade this school year. And she was at the 95, 98 percentile in all the tests. So it was a good fit, and then I was still her teacher. But we know that doesn't happen for every child. So going into the classrooms, I teach all students at the beginning of the school year. Teachers test, and I say, I'm going to take every student in the classroom. I get a chance to work with every student because I do a pull-out program. And so I get a chance to interact with them and teach. I do a lesson that's critical thinking, interactive for these younger kids. But I get a chance to get to know them. So I'm not looking just at teacher referrals. I'm also getting a chance to work with them individually and as a collective group, I take the whole class and, starting my look-fors. Mm-hmm. So then I can service them. And I will go to teachers and say, I really want to work with that child. Tell me a little bit more about that child. And when I get some pushback, and they'll say, well, they're low in reading, they can't do this. And I said, but they're strong in math. And I'm a little different. I do an integrated thematic instructional. I have an integrated thematic instructional approach. So my math students are gifted, are mixed in with the verbal gifted students, as well as a talent pool. So I'm a divergent thinker. So it might be a little more challenging for some people in your the way you teach. But if we take the time to get into those classrooms or have them come to us, we can identify, we're more aware of who should receive services.
And I think, Theresa, in Colorado, we recently had a Javitz grant, which was federally funded grant for gifted education. And my district was part of it, one of 5 school districts, part of it, trying to increase our representation of students of color. And namely, in our district, we have a high percentage of Latino and Latina students. And some of the districts that participated had a high proportion of Native American students. And we really worked on targeted instruction. A lot of the stuff that you mentioned today, some of the communalism, small groups, more visual spatial opportunities, those kind of things, more opportunities for movement. And there were a lot of those things that I was like, you know, this is not part of our normal instructional practice, but it should be. And so that was really, really enlightening for me to go through that process. But I feel like, you know, we still have work to do. And I think Colorado is on the forefront of that. We're really working on that. But again, as always, we still have work to do. Another question, Marissa said, thank you for talking about the use of portfolio and the 9 attributes will powerful when she has future conversations. So she appreciated your response. Rosa Medina, she actually manages our Latino Facebook page, our CAGT Facebook page that we do in Spanish. And she says, sometimes students of color come also from low-income families, and they are at different academic level than their white middle-class peers, especially when they have not been exposed to advanced classes before. How can we include more students of color in our advanced and AP classes who do not pass the required tests to be admitted? So, and I had a discussion with another educator about this, and I'll tack on to this because I have a question too. I would like to learn.
Well,
the process has faults, and we want to make sure that all of our students are given opportunity. How do we address that selection process and circumvent some of the systemic racism within that selection process, within that referral process for those courses?
Well, again, the observation is really important. I was a former principal, and you know, you're observing students in the hallways. You're observing, you know, their language, their body movements. You're getting a feel, but having that one-on-one conversation, getting to know what are their strengths and they'll tell you. I mean, sometimes they'll tell you and sometimes they won't, but mainly you're looking for their strengths. And then you're looking for how you can support the areas that need the support. But when we open the doors, and I'll just be honest, I was at a school that only had identified gifted and some talent pool when I first really got heavily into gifted education. And I said, you know, well, whose child are we leaving out? And I was like, there is no way I'm going to be leaving out my children. And so I have, as an elementary GT teacher, 30 students. I've done multi-age, a 3-4, a 4-5, a 1-2. You know, it comes down to your own belief of, if I see a student and I can provide an opportunity, I see that potential, they may need some support, and you might have to spend a lot of time talking to them about why should they be in the class, because again, being only can be very lonely. You already have self-doubts. The system has already said you don't belong. Why would I want to go into a class that's going to challenge me or give me more work? And it's not supposed to be more work. It's supposed to be different work. We're always working on that one. But, you know, it's that building that relationship with that child to say, I know you can, and I'm going to be there to support you as you go into an advanced math class or advanced reading class, advanced, you know, a STEM class or whatever. We encourage our athletes, don't we? We spend a lot of time when we look at pro basketball and so forth. And I love sports, but look how much encouragement we give to Black athletes to get out there and play for the high school teams and the middle school teams and the college teams. Why don't we do that for our Black students in the academic areas? We recruit. Let's recruit and open those doors. That's my, so.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that response. That's wonderful. And that was kind of my same conversation I had. I said, you know what, then what we do is we go down and we pull them up and we say, you can do this, you're coming with me. So.
All right, that's Randy, you're right.
Yeah, absolutely love it. Let's see if there's any more questions here. I think we've had such a great conversation this evening. I think you're right, though. I think when we're looking at representation, and not just in gifted, but in honors classes and advanced classes and giving kids opportunities, I think it's really important that some of our students, especially our students who have not been exposed, who've been overlooked, part because of their culture, because of their reticence to participate in a system that doesn't necessarily welcome them. I think if we can go to them and say, maybe for the first time an educator looks at them and says, I believe in you. I know what you can do. I've seen you do it. I'm taking you with me. And I think that's a really powerful thing. I think we have to make sure that we're doing that to our students of color who are feeling maybe a little bit brought down by the system and left out by the system.
And I also tell students who are Black and gifted, reach back and bring your peers. Reach back and bring your peers. You don't have to be the only one. I understand, like, I'm not the gatekeeper, I'm just a student. But if you encourage them to bring their friends along, because peer pressure can be a problem. Kids will do things because of peer pressure. So as educators, as adults, we don't have to do it by ourselves. We can say, Theresa, you are in the class. Do you know other students that we are missing? And who can we both talk to? I'd say tag team, but there's just other ways to do it, to get to bring kids along, so that again, if a teacher says, I believe in you, as Randy said, kids are gonna be like, what? Me? And then they're like, wow, I didn't know the teacher believed in me. I didn't know the teacher wrote something about me that would write a letter for me. I'm just shocked. And I know it happened to my daughter, who I tried to get into advanced classes. I've been an IB teacher for several years in the IB, MYP program. She's like, I'm not taking a class. But when her teacher asked her and said, Jackie, you are taking an advanced class, she came home and said, Mrs. Woods said I need to be in the class. I have been saying that for years, but she wanted to underachieve. And so sometimes they don't listen to parents, but they do listen to their teachers. And she was in high school at this time. So it took a long time, but we got her there.
That's great.
So work with your colleagues and work with parents, and let parents know that you have this expectation. I know it's an extra phone call or an email, but when we contact, when we get the family involved, mm-hmm. then it does make a difference. Sometimes mama will not let the no happen. Children will, students will say no, but mama says, oh, yes, you will. Teacher called me, you better be there tomorrow morning, and that makes a difference too. Yeah. So use everything, we use everything.
For sure. And, there was another kind of follow-up question on that. I'm probably going to pronounce this properly, but I'm going to give it a try. Jaqueta Christine Anderson asks, any ideas how to engage secondary students who are Black and GT who have disengaged? And you had a slide about that, but we were kind of crunching on time. What are some things we can do to re-engage and bring back the Verve in our classroom to get some of our students re-engaged?
Well, I'm going to say, going back to the autonomous learner model, that when we ask students what they want to learn, I know we have a curriculum. I know that you have to, follow the pacing guide somewhat, but how do they want to learn it? Give them some freedom to add to their learning. And one of my things I do in my classroom, we kind of throw out the who, what, where, when, why, and how. We say, we're going to use the ABCs of questioning. Am I learning? Can I add to my learning? Can I change something? Give them that opportunity. Yes, they have to learn, but do they have to learn it exactly this way, or do they have some freedom to add to their own learning and make it more personal, so that the product is something they own? They have that response, they own it, and it's their personal piece. So asking, how would you like to learn this material? Or this is the presentation, but again, giving them permission to add more and let them go into the depth, because we want depth and complexity. We just don't want super, artificial. I copied it off the internet and kind of tweaked it a little bit. Let them have that opportunity to add to their learning and make it more personal.
So that connection is so important to increase the engagement for all students, but I think also for students who feel maybe like they've been marginalized or left out of the curriculum It's a way for them to have the opportunity, and for you as a teacher to reach out and have that opportunity to connect the curriculum with their culture, their person, their identity. I think that's an excellent advice. Jenny Ricks says she agrees it's key to get to know all of our students starting in kindergarten. It's also important to teach our classroom teachers to know what characteristics to look for. So in your school district, has there been like bias training or cultural training or anything like that that is done in your district to help teachers kind of understand different perspectives and different cultures in their classrooms?
Yeah, in District 11, we do have, we've been really working on this the last 2 years. We have a new superintendent, Dr. Thomas, and so he's really put some time and energy into looking at equity. District 11 has just hired an equity director. So that's another implementation that's going to be starting in the new school year. We know that the state has said everybody's going to take CLDE classes. We have 45 clock hours we're all supposed to complete before we renew our license. I do think that should be an administrator requirement. That's just my personal thing, not just for teachers. If you're going to be a principal, and I'm being a former principal, everybody needs to be trained. But equity is about just removing all the barriers and giving those supports. So District 11 is moving forward, and I'm excited about that. And and then our GT department was able to send, I think, about 45 teachers to CAGT this past October for this school year. And so they got training. Classroom teachers were able to get training on giftedness and look-fors and have that experience to be part of the CAGT conference along with us GT teachers. So, there were some funds. Probably won't have the funds this coming school year, but anytime the district can, help provide some support, some funding, keep that in mind. And then for those who say, I'm still looking, the NAGC is coming to Denver 2021, in November 2021. Some of us will be there. We hope you're going to be there. I'm doing 3 presentations at NAGC this school year in Orlando. Don't know how that's going to work, but we will definitely see you at NAGC Denver 2021 and at CAGT 2020.
Yes, for sure. And, I really appreciate you sharing everything with us tonight, Theresa. I think, there's still so much more we could talk. I think we could talk about this topic for a really long time. And I think there's still a lot of, and myself included, I think there's a lot of educators out there who still have a lot to learn. And I feel like that's just kind of my theme of this whole month is, and it's just, I realize how much more I still have to learn. And I'm appreciative of you coming and sharing that with us tonight. And I hope that everybody who's been on has felt informed and invigorated by what you have to share. And if you, again, those of you who watched, if you want to go back and reflect on some of this and relearn what you've learned tonight, you can check us out at coloradogifted.org. I will share this presentation on our website. I think you can also rewatch the Facebook stream, but if you want to do it via YouTube so that you can pause and it's a little better quality, feel free to do that. It will be up probably by the end of the day tomorrow or early Thursday. I know I'm going to go back and reference some stuff that Theresa had to share tonight. And now that I have her email, I just could talk to her all the time. But exactly. we do appreciate it. Folks, go back and check things out again. Feel free to contact her through her organization. We just are so thankful to have you tonight, Theresa. And we thank all of our viewers for coming and checking us out and hanging in there with us this evening.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly a wonderful experience for me. Thank you.
All right. Good night, everybody. All right. Stop the live stream.